Still chain?
Always.
Do me a favor. Don't look up like I do. No!
Imagine, if you would, you're playing a video game, and you become so immersed, the outside world no longer exists to you. Only the digital avatar you now control. You forget to eat dinner, and you're now 5 pounds skinnier. You forget to use the restroom, and now there's a terrible scent wafting from your backside. But then, all of a sudden, something happens. Something dumb and unrealistic. So dumb and unrealistic that it throws you back into the stinky reality in which you escaped from. What if I told you we can make all those dumb moments disappear if we just suspend your disbelief?
Why don't the main protagonists get infected when bitten?
This is insane.
As slightly hinted upon in the recent Resident Evil 3 remake, Jill may have some kind of immunities to the T-virus. Not much information is given as to how this could be possible, and she can be infected by the Nemesis, who is created based on the T-model tyrants. From what we've seen in the first Resident Evil game, the virus given by the T-model series is somewhat of a stronger infection than from a regular bite or from drinking the contaminated water due to the Epsilon strain, the same strain that causes Crimson Heads to mutate. Look at Wesker. He already had some genetic fuck-ups in his DNA due to him being a test subject of Oswell E. Spencer, but the T-series awakened what was dormant.
Sure, I'm not human anymore, but just look at the power I've gained.
This is also further backed up by Brad Vickers. How so? Luckily for this, we have 3 really great examples. Both of the Resident Evil 3 games, and even the original Resident Evil 2 game. So let's break it down by looking at the original Resident Evil 3 first. Set a few hours before Resident Evil 2, when Jill runs into Brad at the police station, he's already wounded, but is then finished off and infected by the Nemesis and his personal Japanese porn genre appendage. Next, jump to Resident Evil 2. You can run into Brad by following a strict set of rules when starting the game as Leon or Claire, and in doing so, when you meet him and kill him, you now have the option to change your clothes. Not much to go on, right? He's just like a regular zombie. Except he isn't. He is slightly stronger than regular zombies. He takes more hits before he goes down. Thought it was just a throwaway detail? Maybe at the time, but it's become a recurring detail in the Resident Evil games. In the Resident Evil 3 remake, when Carlos runs into Brad at the RPD, he's much stronger to take down than the rest of the zombies. You can empty a full clip into his head and he's still coming at you. But I thought you're just supposed to remove the head or destroy the brain to take down a zombie? Well, you're right, unless you remember who infected Brad.
But Brad didn't get infected by the Nemesis in the RE3 remake.
You might say. And you might be right. We don't see Brad get infected, but do you remember what he says to Jill when he bumps into her after she escapes from Nemi in her apartment?
You okay?
What was that thing?
Damned if I know. But right now it's got a hard-on for the only 2 stars left in town. You and me.
Nemesis was right behind Jill and Brad when the apartment collapsed on him. Brad stays behind to barricade the door as Jill makes a run for it. That's the last Jill sees of Brad. Now, I don't really like fabricating scenarios, even though that's what most of the series is about. But who's to say that Nemesis didn't break down the door and infect Brad after Jill left the bar? It's highly likely that this could have happened. This would also explain why Brad is so much harder to take down than your traditional zombies. And if you look at the Nightmare and Inferno difficulty settings, even after you take Brad down, He gets back up and corners Carlos in the evidence lockup room. So with this information, it's safe to assume that the potency of the T-virus and the Nemesis series are much stronger than your regular zombie thanks to the Epsilon strain and the Nemesis alpha parasite. So this explains why Jill could still get infected even though it's hinted that she might be immune. Well, maybe not immune, but have stronger immunities than your regular person. So that brings us to our next question. Who all has immunities, and why? Firstly, let's name all of the playable protagonists who can get bitten and don't turn in the series. Chris, Jill, Rebecca, Leon, Claire, Ada, Steve, Carlos, Billy, and, though many years later, Barry. Doesn't it seem strange that many of these people were all part of the same team and that they all had the immunity? It seems too coincidental, doesn't it? It seems too easy. Unless we look at who assembled the team. In 1996, Mayor Michael Warren announced the creation of an elite law enforcement team as part of his Bright Raccoon 21 urban redevelopment campaign, which was based on funding from the private sector rather than local taxes. As the largest employer in the county, Umbrella USA provided considerable funds for this venture. Due to their influence, Umbrella was successful in choosing former Army officer Dr. Albert Wesker as captain ahead of the more popular Enrico Marini. This was, in secret, a means of keeping stars under the control of someone they could trust. Now, notice it doesn't say, under the watch of someone they could trust. It clearly states, under the control. Wesker probably had a lot of leverage as to who was put on the Stars team, as well did Marini. Unlike the police departments, Stars recruited from outside the established police force, instead relying on military veterans and specialists in a variety of fields from computer hacking to chemical disposal. Nonetheless, entrants from RPD were welcome, provided they passed a written exam. The latest recruit to Stars was Rebecca Chambers, a genius who graduated with a BSc at the age of 18. While not trained for combat, her role as a medic was recognized. From this, we can probably assume a few who were recruited from outside, Wesker's pick.
Chris Redfield. Jill Valentine. Barry Burton. Rebecca Chambers. Albert Wesker. Resident Evil.
And those who passed the written exam, Marini's pick, Forrest, Frost, Kenneth, and Brad. This is just speculation, of course, but currently our working theory. We know the reasons that the majority of these people were picked because of their skills. But what if they were also picked because they had potential antibodies and immunities that Umbrella was interested in? We know that the Arklay Mansion mission was a contain and cleanup mission with the idea of Stars being destroyed at the end to silence any witnesses. But what if it was also a screening to see who had immunity? I'd say it's a pretty solid theory as to why so many immune were on the same team. But let's break it down a little further. Let's break it down by characters. Let's start with Chris and Claire. Now, if we take our theory of Wesker's immune recruits, we've got Chris figured out. But what about Claire? Just because Chris is immune doesn't mean that Claire will be. And you're right. Unless the antibodies and immunities are hereditary. If it's in their genetics, then it makes sense as to why she'd have the immunity as well. The same case goes for Barry and Moira Burton. Barry isn't a playable character canonically until Resident Evil Revelations 2, and the zombies in that game may or may not be created by the same strain of T-virus that was found in Arklay and Raccoon City. Due to the virus and bracelets and testing that was done to each person living on that island, this could mean that if the virus was a different strain, it might be more contained, Umbrella learning their mistake of how quickly the virus can spread through scratches or bites, and can no longer be passed on like it used to. Or, if it could be passed on through bites and scratches, then it shows that Barry is immune and so is Moira, as mentioned earlier, through genetics. We can assume this due to, even though a cure, the T vaccine, was created in 2004, Barry doesn't have any on him. In Revelations 2, Claire can get bit, but we've established that she's probably immune just like Chris. Moira can get bit, and so can Barry. But what about Natalia? Firstly, she's already infected in a different way, but also, she never gets bit during the entire campaign. So, sorry Natalia, probably not one of the lucky ones.
A cage went in search of a bird, but now the bird is gone. The bird has changed.
And now we move on to Rebecca. Rebecca might actually be the easiest one to explain. She's a genius, works with medicine and chemistry, and is recognized for her medical expertise. She's already a cut above the rest. But not only that, we all know who had a little creepy crush on our cute little kitten. Wesker. I think regardless of whether she was an immune candidate or not, Wesker would still have added her to the team, hoping that she would become his assistant. Luckily for Wesker, it appears that she may also be immune. The question you're probably asking yourself is,
Well, how can they even determine who may or may not be immune? At this point, Wesker's just pulling names out of a hat.
until you think about how long Wesker has been working with Umbrella and how long Ada has been involved in the bioorganic weapons underground. Although she infiltrated Umbrella in 1998, her syndicate had her get involved since the early 90s. Ada had already made a name for herself as an independent contractor by this time, so this could have caught the attention of Umbrella, Wesker, which made it easier for her to infiltrate, manipulate John Clemens to get information, even so far as to become Wesker's right hand in RE4. When everyone else was getting infected with the airborne Epsilon virus in the mansion, including John, why is it that Ada did not get infected? It's very possible that Wesker looked up her file and information as an independent contractor, possibly got a blood sample, and noticed something slightly abnormal. He tested on it with the T-virus to see if it would affect it, but surprisingly, nothing happened. Being that he only had one test subject to go off of, he needed to find a way to test multiple different subjects with different T-virus infections. Bites, scratches, pecking, clawing, and so forth. Why didn't he just do these tests with Ada? We know Umbrella is cruel and has no qualms about torturing and testing on people. Just look at Lisa Trevor. This is true, but Ada's skills and knowledge was just as valuable to them as her immunity strain. This can be backed up by seeing how many times Wesker tells Ada he's done with her, but then immediately changes his mind when he sees what she can provide for him. So, thanks to Ada's blood, Wesker was able to look for immune candidates and create stars. Okay, sorry about that. That kind of went off on its own suspension of disbelief tangent. So, let's move on to Leon. Leon is the singular exception on this entire list. He is the lucky one. Nobody picked him. Nobody screened him. He was just on his way to his first day of work when he stumbled upon Raccoon City, got involved with some shit, got bit, but did not change or become infected. This could also be one of the reasons that caught Ada's attention, the reason why she sees him different than the rest. He's determined, resilient, smart, and immune, just like her. Now remember, at this point in time, she's never seen the STARS team. She had no idea about Wesker's own test subjects. She thought she was the only one. And now she knows she's not. And she sees a lot of herself in Leon. Or she just sees Leon as a possible big paycheck in the future. Don't die, Leon. You're worth a lot of money. So good job, Leon. Out of all the possible characters who can just coincidentally be immune, you're the only one. You, sir, are the diamond in the rough.
But Leon gets infected in Resident Evil 4.
You might say. By the way, you interrupt a lot. But yes, you are correct. Leon does get infected in Resident Evil 4. With a completely different infection. A parasite, not a virus. Whew. Okay, almost done, I promise. Being that we're moving on to our final part of this theory, we're going to bundle up Steve, Billy, and Carlos. What do they all have in common? They're all only in one game each, and they are not immune. We can back up this claim by looking back at each of these characters' final moments on screen. Even though Steve can get bit, it isn't enough time for him to die and mutate. Though, in the end, Steve was infected by Alexia Ashford with the Veronica virus and died after confessing his affections for Claire.
Cannot.
What are you saying?
I'm glad that I met you. I love you. Claire.
He was only 17, you monsters!
Steve? Steve?
Now Billy. He gets bit by zombies, eliminators, and bats. And after he and Rebecca finish off the Leech Queen, they stand on a hill as the sun rises. She removes his handcuffs, and they say their last goodbyes. But what happens to Billy after this? We haven't seen him again since. What if, as Rebecca walks towards the mansion, Billy notices his wounds from the night before are looking worse and worse. Now he's understanding how the infection works and that it's already too late. The reason why Rebecca didn't notice was because her wounds still look the same to her. Even if she thinks she may be infected like Edward was, she still knows that she's alive now, and she needs to make sure Alpha Team is okay. Billy makes sure Rebecca is now far away enough that she won't hear the echo of the gunshot ring through the mountains from the revolver he placed in his mouth and pulled the trigger. Fade to black. Until Capcom brings him back, that's how I imagine Billy's character arc finished. And finally, Carlos, also not immune. With Carlos, his ending is slightly more ambiguous due to the recent Resident Evil 3 remake ending. Carlos is infected, but keeps fighting to help Jill get out. He feels guilty about who he works for and everything they've done. Jill trusted him even after she knew the truth, so he felt devoted to making sure she gets out alive at any cost. Jill knew he was infected, but she wants to give him a fighting chance, as she clearly says here.
We're gonna make a run for it!
Come on, Jill. We know how this ends.
No, I don't.
She wants to assume that Carlos may also be immune, but just in case, she went to get the vaccine, which is why she was very visibly distraught when Nikolai shot it. Even though it was to save anyone and everyone who was infected, her mind went to the first person it could save, Carlos, and his one chance of being saved, now gone. This is why we never see Carlos again. The reason why I say it's ambiguous is because of this scene. Maybe Jill was able to synthesize some kind of vaccine with what tiny little bit of vaccine was left, in turn eventually leading up to the T vaccine creation. Or maybe she didn't, and this empty hollow vaccine vial is just a painful reminder of another friend she lost in Raccoon. But hey, this is all just ADHD babblings in my attempt to help you suspend your disbelief. But what do you think about all this, and do you think characters can actually be immune, or is it all just for the sake of good gameplay? Leave a comment down below. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like, and if you want to hear more insane ramblings on how to suspend your disbelief, then subscribe for more, and give me your thoughts on moments in gaming where you would like to suspend your disbelief. Thanks for watching.